Have you ever wondered about every single mission the 212th Attack Battalion went on, or maybe the details about who they were? Well, in today's video, I will break down everything we know about the 212th, from their organization all the way down to every single mission they went on across Legends and canon.
For the Republic!
If you are one of the most recognizable clone units in all of Star Wars, then you no doubt have to have a great reputation, and the 212th Attack Battalion lives up to that standard. To start things off though, we have to talk about who the 212th were and their characteristics. Arguably, the most recognizable characteristic of the 212th is their armor. The 212th armor was marked with an orangish-yellow color scheme across both phases. We also see multiple subunits of the 212th wear unique armor, like the 212th Airborne armor, the 212th Geonosian ARF Trooper armor, and the 212th Cold Weather armor. However, looks were not the only thing that defined the 212th. They were also defined by their actions and fighting styles. Notably, the 212th is described as being comprised of airborne and stealth infantry companies. Alongside this, we are further told that they were well known for their full frontal assaults and siege-breaking tactics. Overall, the battalion is also known for their numerous successful missions and overall success on the battlefield. But now it's important to understand the organization of the 212th. Thankfully, due to the existence of a lot of Legends information, we know exactly where the 212th falls within the Greater Republic military structure. The 212th Attack Battalion was organized under the 7th Sky Corps within the 3rd Systems Army. The 3rd Systems Army was led by General Kenobi, while Clone Marshal Commander assisted Kenobi in leading not only the 212th, but the entire 7th Sky Corps. However, the 212th also had many subunits and divisions within it, which many people are aware of without knowing it. One of the most well-known and renowned companies in the 212th is Ghost Company. Ghost Company is known for their 2 on-screen appearances at Ryloth and the Second Battle of Geonosis, both of which they showed extreme success in combat at. Alongside the fact that they had great success in combat, we know that they were a standard infantry company, being comprised of 144 soldiers and being led by a captain. Sadly though, we aren't sure who that captain is. However, it's often assumed that by the time Waxer had reached the rank of lieutenant, the platoon that he led on Umbara was within Ghost Company. Speaking of Waxer, he, alongside Boyle, were part of the 212th Recon Division. Sadly, information on this division is very limited, though we do know that this was one of the recon units within the 212th. Additionally, their only confirmed appearance is them wearing the orange camoed ARF Trooper armor and being deployed to the Second Battle of Geonosis, where they were led on the ground by Cody. However, that would not be the last team that we would see Cody leading. At the Battle of Sarrish, Cody alongside an unnamed lieutenant would lead A Squad. Though we are not sure where A Squad fell in the greater 212th organization, we do know that they were part of it. As I mentioned before though, the 212th had other units within it, specifically an airborne unit. The 2nd Airborne Company is one such unit, and it was deployed to Utapau at the end of the war. Specifically, we actually learned the name of one of the squads at Utapau, being Parjai Squad. Now, Parjai Squad was led by Sergeant Barlex and was said to be one of the first squads deployed on the Utapau surface. Now, there's actually another detachment known as Red Units at Utapau, but there's really no information on them other than a line from the movie. The 212th also had very unique subunits that were not their regular clone units being attached to them, the first of which was Foxtrot Group. This was a group of clone commandos who were not only under the Special Operations Brigade, but were also under the 212th, which was led by Clone Captain Gregor at the Battle of Sarrish. The other unique subunit was Miadrix Company, which was a company of Runian soldiers that were allied with the Republic. They were placed under the 212th in preparation for the Battle of Abrion Bridge. While the company was placed under the 212th, they were still led by 2 non-clones, being Commander Mikadrix and Lieutenant Oron. But now that we know the organization of the 212th, it's also important to talk about their members. We actually know of at least 20 named clone troopers who were in the 212th across Legends and canon, those being Sergeant Barlex, Boyle, Kale, Kryze, Eyeball, Gearshift, Captain Gregor, Longshot, Pio, Reed, Switch, Threpwood, Tracker, Trapper, Lieutenant Waxer, Wooly, as well as obviously Clone Commander Cody. Now you may be thinking that's only 17, but the final 3 we only know their CT numbers rather than their actual names, those being CT 8867, 8868, and 8869. Now that we've established who the 212th are and what made them who they were, it's time to get into the best part about them, their missions. Here, I will attempt to break down every mission I've been able to track down regarding the 212th, whether it's a smaller subunit within them or a mass deployment of the 212th. I do want to put a minor disclaimer out there and say this is not the end-all be-all. There could be appearances I missed or new appearances added, especially smaller appearances in Legends, but to my knowledge, I got all of them here. Additionally, I want to add that some of these battles see Kenobi and Cody deployed with unmarked troopers, and it's often assumed that these unmarked troopers are members of the 212th because of the presence under Cody and Kenobi. Furthermore, I've attempted to put all of these in chronological order, so let's start with the first year of the war. The first mission we can track that the 212th were on was at the planet of Krystar. On this planet, the 212th, and specifically Ghost Company, was deployed to rescue a number of clone troopers who had been secretly taken prisoner on the planet. During this mission, we would see Waxer and Boyle lead the rest of the company in rescuing another Ghost Company member, Wooly, as well as other clones, including a member of the 104th Battalion. Sometime shortly after this, we would see the 212th again deployed to the moon of Caliban. After Grievous had invaded the planet, the 212th were taken prisoner alongside Kenobi till they worked with the locals known as the Queebies to revolt against Grievous and escape the planet. Uniquely, this is our first and only appearance of the unique orange snowtrooper gear worn by the 212th. The next battle we'd get to see the 212th deployed at would be the Siege of Hisseen. This planet would be put under siege by the Separatists, so a large Republic force consisting of Anakin in the 501st, Master Plo in the 104th, as well as Kenobi in the 212th would be deployed to help rescue the local parliament and push the Separatists off the planet, a task that the combined Republic forces would accomplish. The next battle that we would see the 212th out would canonically be their earliest appearance on screen, and this is on Christophsis. Here, they would fight alongside the 501st once again, this time to help secure the planet from the Separatist grasps. We mostly see the 212th fighting in the front lines and pushing back the Separatists here. Eventually though, Kenobi captured the Separatist leader and the planet was taken by the Republic. It's also worth noting though that Slick Squad, who was seen in the Clone Wars show, are often talked about being either part of the 212th or the larger 7th Sky Corps, though there's no confirmation of either. Following along with the Clone Wars movie, they were immediately next deployed to the planet of Teth, where the 212th would be deployed to back up and basically rescue the 501st, specifically Torrent Company, as they become pinned down in an abandoned monastery. Their next mission would take place shortly after the events of the Rishi Moon outpost. The 212th would be seen at the planet of Abrion Major, where the Separatists were making a new mega ion cannon. It was here that the 212th worked with Commander Mikadrix, as I mentioned before, as well as the 442nd Siege Battalion. This battle was awful for the Republic though. They were forced onto one single bridge in an attempt to get to the Separatist factory, and this funneled them into essentially a massacre with extremely high number of Republic forces being lost. This is also the last battle that we can confirm took place in 22 BBY, and we now move to the next year of the war. The first battle we know of in 21 BBY was on Ryloth, though it actually has two parts to it in Legends. Because around the same time of the events of the Ryloth arc we see on the Clone Wars show, the 212th along with a number of other Jedi and clones were deployed to Juma 9, a space station above Ryloth that had been taken by the Separatists. Together, the combined Republic forces took the station though. Following this, we would see the canon appearance of the 212th in the heat of battle on the surface of Ryloth. Specifically, the 212th were tasked with landing on the surface and taking the city of Nabat. Their first task was taking out the outer defenses before moving in to save the prisoners in the city and destroying the Separatist anti-air emplacements. This battle is also where we get to see Waxer and Boyle meet their friend Numa. Following this, the 212th would be seen again alongside the 501st at the first Battle of Felucia, though not much is known about this battle. When we see the battle, both the 501st and the 212th are actually in the process of being rescued by the 104th after a strong Separatist push. The next battle of the 212th would be one of the most crucial of the Clone Wars, and that would be the second battle of Geonosis. During this battle, the 212th would play a crucial role in the overall plan. They were tasked with securing the rendezvous point for all of the Republic forces, known as Point Rain. This point was highly contested and required significant fighting by the 212th. Once all of the forces had regrouped there though, they all pushed together to destroy the Separatist shield generator on the planet. Following the later destruction of the facility, the 212th was sent to find Luminara Unduli as she had went missing looking for Poggle the Lesser. The 212th, alongside Anakin and Kenobi, rescued her and arrested Poggle, and took out the Geonosian Queen in the process. Shortly after their success at Geonosis, the 212th was deployed above Saleucami in order to rescue Eth Koth and to chase General Grievous. Unfortunately, Grievous was able to escape to the surface of Saleucami, which prompted the 212th alongside the 501st to chase him across the planet, though he eventually escaped. Now, it's also worth mentioning that the 212th had assumed involvement on Kamino during the Battle of Kamino. And although we don't see any specifically marked 212th troopers, the deployment of Kenobi as well as the larger force that was being moved to Kamino brings in the assumption that the 212th were there. But again, there's no confirmation of this, so it's up to your own interpretation. However, this would be the last engagement definitively in 21 BBY if the 212th were there, and this moves us into the next year of the war. The first battle we know about in 20 BBY has basically no information on it. We simply know that the battle occurred, and that was the Battle of Antolus I. This took place in the early days of 20 BBY and saw Anakin, Kenobi, Cody, and a number of clones taking place within it. Following this, the next time we'd see the 212th was at one of the biggest battles and one of the worst battles for the Republic, and that was the Battle of Sarrish. This is reportedly one of the toughest losses for the Republic, and in canon we know very little information about the battle, only the devastating nature of the battle as well as the involvement of Gregor's Foxtrot unit. However, if we look into legends, we get greater detail about this battle. We know that this battle was the result of Republic forces chasing Separatists from Duro, though we are not sure if the 212th were actually involved on Duro. The 212th then made their attack on the planet where the Separatists had held themselves up in a droid factory protected by large mountaintop weapon emplacements. These emplacements made frontal assault very difficult, so Kenobi split his forces, half of them being led by him and the other half by Cody as they tried to scatter the enemy forces. The two groups both suffered heavy resistance in their missions, but were able to group up again at a staging area. Despite this success, we note that the latter end of the war was horrible for the Republic, with heavy losses in the Republic forces being forced to retreat from the battle. It was during this retreat that Gregor tried to do all he could and aid the Republic forces and the wounded, but he and his entire unit were classified as MIA. Sometime after this, Jedi Master Ivan Peel was captured carrying information about the Nexus route, which was a key hyperspace route. So, a smaller detachment of the 212th and the 501st were sent alongside Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka to carry out a rescue at the Citadel on Lola Sayu. Here, they rescued the Jedi Master as well as his crew, including Tarkin. And although Jedi Master Peel would fall during this escape, the rest of the Republic forces would be picked up by Master Plo in an LAAT for extraction. The next battle of the 212th and 20 BBY would be one of the most sad for those who are fans of the 212th. In the wake of Umbara leaving the Republic, it sided with the Separatists, and this prompted a Republic invasion of the planet. The 212th were tasked with taking the capital city from the south, and their original assault was aided by Sasai Tin, Pong Krell, and a number of other clone units. Despite all this support, they were unable to easily do this, and they originally faced heavy resistance from Umbara ground forces. Additionally, sometime into the fight, the Umbarans would be supported by an airbase that the 501st would be directed to take out. However, even after this, the 212th would be unable to finish their mission as the capital began getting reinforced by supplies from a Separatist supply ship. The supply ship was eventually taken out by a trio of clones from the 501st, and Kenobi was eventually able to take the capital, though during this time, Pong Krell had tricked Waxer's platoon and a group of the 501st into fighting each other, sadly resulting in the loss of Waxer. The next battle would be the Battle of Horain. This is another one of those battles where we know the 212th were there, but we know very little about them because the story focuses on other events during that time. Nonetheless, we know that the 212th served alongside the 501st again during this battle against the Separatists who had set up a garrison on the planet. And other than that, that's about all we know. The next battle, though, later on in 20 BBY, the 212th and the 501st would again be sent on a mission together to investigate why the entire population of Kiros had disappeared. Once they arrived, they were met with Separatist resistance, and before the Jedi split off to do their own thing, the Republic forces engaged numerous detachments of battle droids. Ultimately, though, the Jedi and Rex were sent on a chase off-world, and we do not know what the 212th did during this time. Later on in this year, we know that after Maul had gotten into a conflict on the planet of Moorijhone, he sided with the natives against the mining company on the planet to get Savage Opress back. They were engaged by the 212th as well as a number of Jedi who showed up to put a stop to this. Here, the clone forces were easily able to take out the lesser armed natives of the planet, but ultimately Maul was still able to get away. The next battle would take place at an unknown location in the galaxy. While Kenobi and the 212th were en route to rescue Ahsoka and a number of Padawans, Kenobi's fleet was ambushed by General Grievous and his forces. During this conflict, Grievous boarded Kenobi's ship and took out many clones and crippled the ship, which ultimately forced Kenobi and the rest of his forces into escape pods before the ship was destroyed. Before we end 20 BBY, I do want to make one smaller mention of a mission, and that is the mission of D-Squad as well as the Republic Conference, because technically they do find Gregor, who's technically part of the 212th. Plus, at the conference, we do see Obi-Wan, Cody, and in some cases, other 212th troopers, so it's worth mentioning their appearances at these two events, though we cannot confirm the greater 212th's involvement. Moving into 19 BBY, the first battle we know about took place after a conflict between the Separatists and Maul's Shadow Collective. Here, Kenobi and Master Tip Lee found a Mandalorian outpost called Vizsla's Keep 09, an asteroid base in the Ring of Felbos. The duo, alongside the 212th, engaged Shadow Collective members here and were looking for Darth Maul. They were later joined by Mace Windu and Aayla Secura, and all of them fought together against not only the Shadow Collective, but also Dooku and Maul, who had both showed up, Dooku siding with the Separatists, of course. However, both of them were able to escape and the Republic lost Master Tip Lee here. Again, this is another case of a battle we know the 212th were at, but we don't see them as the main focus of the battle. Closer to the end of the war, the 212th aboard the Vigilance were tasked with a delicate mission. The fallen Jedi Quinlan Vos and Dooku had been captured and were being held on the ship. However, the duo alongside Ventress actually escaped the ship. However, it was damaged and they crash landed on Christophsis. The 212th were sent to the crash site to investigate, specifically members Threpwood, Tracker, and Boyle. Once there, they found that they had escaped and they were given the order to take them out if they ever found them again. The Republic then tracked them to a separatist base. The Republic forces, including the 212th, then began their assault on the base, first with airstrikes from ARC-170s, and then later on the ground. However, they ended up delaying and then stopping their assault so that Kenobi and Anakin could sneak in. Before the end of the battle, Ventress was lost to Dooku, who had escaped with the help of Grievous, and Quinlan had come back to the light side. The entirety of the Republic forces, including the 212th, then returned to Coruscant with Quinlan in custody. The next time we would see the 212th would be even closer to the end of the war, this time on the planet of Anaxes. And while a large presence of the 212th at this battle can be assumed, we only know of their engagements at the very end of the battle. Fighting alongside Windu, the 187th, and Kenobi, they all retook Anaxes after the Republic had saved Echo from the Separatist grasps. One of the final battles we would see the 212th out is Yerbana. Here again, we do not know a lot about their mission. We know that Kenobi and the 212th alongside the 501st under Anakin were sent to the planet and told to split their forces. The 212th's mission was to take an unknown occupied city, but they became pinned down on a bridge and suffered heavy losses. They were then supported, or rather saved, by the 501st, but as the battle came to a close and the Republic took the planet, their next mission would come much sooner than they expected. As after they had met with Ahsoka and heard of her plea for the Republic to help on Mandalore, both the Jedi were called to Coruscant as it was being invaded. So obviously this leads into the Battle of Coruscant, where we do not see the direct involvement of the 212th. We can assume their involvement as all of the forces that were at Yerbana, minus the 332nd, were redirected straight to Coruscant. Additionally, after the battle, we would see the 212th on Coruscant till their final deployment with the Republic. We now get to the 212th's final deployment for the Republic, and this would be on the planet of Utapau, and this is perhaps their most famous deployment. They were deployed alongside Kenobi to find and take out the leader of the droid army, General Grievous. The following battle would be successful, but would lead directly into Order 66 and the fall of the Republic, which would lead into their Imperial service. However, before we get into the 212th service to the Empire, we must first talk about the missions during the Clone Wars with unspecified dates. To start with the only canon engagement that we have, this is the Battle of Bray, sometime between 20 and 19 BBY. Here, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Adi Gallia, and the 212th were deployed to the planet of Bray. They were tracking both Count Dooku and somebody named Lord Ravana, who is basically a giant vampire werewolf. Once again, not too much is known about this battle, but we do know the 212th were there and that they engaged in this battle. Our next battle is another classic case of the 212th being in a story but not being the focus of the story. This time, they were on the planet of Bogoa, sometime in 20 BBY. Here, the 212th were in combat when they discovered a B1 droid who had been reprogrammed and was allying with them. During this battle, the 212th would also have to fight Ventress and a unique Chiss bounty hunter. Additionally, we know the battle ended in a Republic victory, though this is all we know. Another battle we know very little information about is the attack on Bandomeer, where a number of Jedi farmers as well as Kenobi and the 212th had to fight Separatist forces. Both sides suffered heavy losses in this engagement, but the Republic came out on top, and this took place sometime between 21 and 20 BBY. Finally, in late 21 BBY and early 20 BBY, a bounty hunter named Volan Das was responsible for a number of raids on Republic Hypermatter Refineries. During one such raid, Mace Windu and his clone troopers alongside Kenobi and the 212th were deployed to stop him. The resulting battle saw the destruction of all the droids that Das was using and him being captured. This led directly into the next conflict, which was known as the riot aboard the Tempestus, where Das escaped alongside a number of other bounty hunters and prisoners aboard the ship and attempted to start a riot. The 212th ended up stopping them though and capturing them all, though Das uploaded his consciousness to a droid and escaped. We now move into the Imperial service of the 212th, and as the Republic became the Empire, the 212th were still on Utapau, and they would work to subjugate the planet and to arrest members of the Utapau resistance. Their final known appearance and mission would be to Kashyyyk. After initial control of the planet was set up by the 41st Elite Corps, the 212th were deployed to further pacify and enslave the planet. During this time, Cody was still in charge, but they were all under General Kada, within a new Stormtrooper Corps. Cody would desert sometime after this mission though, but the 212th would return again to stop a Wookiee revolt on the planet. But that concludes every single mission that we know of the 212th. This now stands as a complete breakdown of the 212th Attack Battalion, as well as all of their known missions, details, and facts. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe.